It's been over 110 years since the sinking of the Titanic, and somehow the Titanic is more famous than ever. Every year, millions of people fall down the Titanic rabbit hole. TikToks, YouTube videos, memes, documentaries, conspiracy theories. But why this ship? Why this disaster? I mean, there are other disasters. There have been plenty of other sinkings throughout the years, but for some reason, the Titanic holds a special place in history and in pop culture like nothing we've seen before. The fact that you clicked on this video and my entire YouTube channel is devoted to this topic shows us that it still holds a grip on us. Today, we're gonna explore why Titanic continues to live rent-free in our collective imagination. We'll dig into the psychology of disasters, we'll take a look at the history of Titanic interest over the years, and break down why no other shipwreck, not even the OceanGate Titan sub, has come close to this level of obsession. Before we jump in, I'm Raph, the Titanic guy, and here on my channel we talk about the Titanic, disasters, and other historical events, so if you are into that, hit that like and subscribe button. So let's start with something weird about being human. We're kind of obsessed with disasters. Psychologists call it morbid curiosity. It's the same reason we slow down at car crashes even when we know we shouldn't. We just can't look away. It's something that draws us in. We may be horrified, but we cannot look away. And there's actually science behind this. According to this article from NBC News, our brains evolved to pay attention to danger, even from a safe distance. The doctor in the article explains that our brains are drawn to this, and it's our survival instincts at work. This acts as a preventative mechanism to give us information on the dangers to avoid and to flee from. So we also watch because we ask ourselves real questions without being tied to the true reality of the disaster. Things such as, if I was in that situation, what would I do? How would I respond? Would I be the hero or would I be the villain? Could I endure the pain? Would I have the strength to recover? We play out different scenarios in our head because it helps us to reconcile that which is uncontrollable with our need to remain in control. Studies have found that our negativity bias is also a driver of why we can't divert our attention from disasters. Psychologically, negative events activate our brains more than positive ones. Now, with this in mind, we can take a look at the Titanic. Titanic wasn't just a tragedy. It was beautiful, cinematic, almost a poetic disaster in the sense that it combined all of these emotions that our brains are naturally drawn to. And we're gonna dive into these details that are unique to Titanic a little bit later in the video, so stick around for that. Now let's take a step back and look at the history of the Titanic. And here's something that a lot of people don't realize. Titanic wasn't always this famous. After the disaster in April of 1912, obviously it captured the attention of the world. But shortly after, the public attention faded. And let's think about what happened after 1912. There were some major world events. Firstly, we had the Great War, World War I, which reshaped the entire world. And then we had the post-war era, the Roaring 20s, where people were living their lives happy that the war was over, followed by the stock market crash of '29, which then led to the Great Depression. People were struggling. And then the rising tensions in Europe led to another major conflict, World War II. And this was followed by the Cold War. So, I mean, there were a lot of things happening in the world that were arguably more important than reminiscing on a disaster that happened at the turn of the century. It had been decades by this point. Now, there were a few books and, some black and white films, but for decades, Titanic was a ghost. It was largely forgotten. I like to think that there were three major events that happened that reignited the public's interest in Titanic. Number one, the release of the book A Night to Remember in 1955 by Walter Lord, and shortly after, the release of the groundbreaking film A Night to Remember in 1958. This book basically compiled witness accounts from the inquiry, and it really was the most accurate account to date up until that point. And I would say it even holds up to this day. The movie, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. I argue that this is still the most historically accurate movie to date. Apart from a couple of facts, mainly the fact that they don't show Titanic splitting in two. That wasn't confirmed until later, but definitely worth watching if you haven't seen it. Which leads us into the next major event. So in 1985, Dr. Robert Ballard on September 1st discovered the wreck of the Titanic on the ocean floor. This was massive. This was huge. It was like finding the real life Atlantis. The news was all over it and people's interest really got reignited. It made national news, everybody was talking about it, and people were seeing the first images of the Titanic since 1912.
I went in there, totally under control, so to speak, and I was blown away. All that's left of human signature are their shoes. These are the tombstones.
Naturally, more expeditions took place and artifacts were recovered, so Titanic fever was really starting to set in, which culminated in the third major event, 1997 and James Cameron's Titanic. I'd say that this movie turned an entire generation into Titanic fans basically overnight. It made the story of Titanic emotional, romantic, and accessible. It was the first time also that we're seeing a truly realistic depiction of the ship, of the sinking, and all of the drama that unfolded that night. And you know what? Surprisingly, there were actually some survivors from the real Titanic that watched the movie. I even made a video about it on my YouTube channel that you can watch here if you're interested. And after that, Titanic sort of took on a life of its own. We had the 100th anniversary of the sinking in 2012, where they did a re-release of the movie and they showed it in theaters. Social media was also becoming a thing at the time. So, creators like myself, we were sharing stories about the Titanic. There were TikToks, memes, deep dives, YouTube videos, games. Titanic was no longer just a shipwreck, it became a cultural icon. Now we need to ask ourselves, why this disaster? What made Titanic so unforgettable? Why don't we talk about other shipwrecks with the same passion? Now before we get into that, if you've been staring at my shirt and you like it, you can get your very own at titanicguy.com. Now, why Titanic? I would say that the Titanic disaster had everything, so let's break this down. Let's go back to the turn of the century. In this point in time, you had all of this innovation happening. Science and technology had taken such a major leap during the Industrial Revolution. We had new inventions every day. People's lives were drastically changing. And now here we have the Titanic. We have this brand new, unsinkable ship. It is the biggest and most luxurious ship in the world. It has the best safety features to date that people truly do believe it was unsinkable. Even though it wasn't advertised that way, they believe that. You had the richest, most powerful, well-known people in the world, and also immigrants seeking a new life, all grouped together on this floating palace. And this, of course, is the maiden voyage of this grand ship. It is the first time it is going to set sail. It is also a ship that does not have enough lifeboats. Now you take this floating palace and it hits an iceberg in the middle of the night. Now the ship starts to sink slowly enough for all of these stories to unfold, for drama to play out, for people to be heroes, villains, brave, cowards, for passengers and crew to become well-known figures like the unsinkable Molly Brown, Bruce Ismay, the drunk baker Charles Jugan, Wallace Hartley and the other musicians, Second Officer Lightoller, all happening in the middle of the ocean, in the freezing Atlantic, having the technology to communicate their peril via wireless, but having no one around to actually do anything about it. There's the evacuation, lifeboats being loaded, panic, violins playing, class divide, everything that we love in drama, history, and storytelling in real life. Honestly, I don't think there has ever been a 3-hour window in human history that has been studied more closely. To this day, people will watch Titanic Honor and Glory's real-time sinking animation to relive those 2 hours and 40 minutes, minute by minute. And when I say people, I mean me. I will watch that, and I'm sure many of you will watch that. It's a tragedy that plays out just long enough for all of this drama to unfold on a stage that is slowly and steadily sinking into the ocean. You couldn't make up a better script. Now to get personal, why is Titanic special to me? And I want to share this because many of you may share the same experience as me. I've been obsessed with Titanic for most of my life, for as far back as I can remember. And when people ask me why, I tell them it's just always something that has been a part of my life. And I'm sure many of you can relate. I'm somebody who's always been captivated by disasters. It's just something that's always been super interesting to me. I can't look away. And when I was little, in 1998, I watched a documentary about the Titanic. Then shortly after, in 1998, the movie came out. And once I watched the movie, that really stuck with me. I remember as a kid, I used to go to the public library and read every book that I could find on the Titanic, learning about the story, the passengers, the ship itself, everything. And that's all I wanted to talk about with my friends. Everyone would just tune me out because I was just, talking about the Titanic. And now, because of social media, I've discovered a whole community of people who are the same as me. So to me, it's such a unique story. And I think of it this way. Titanic represented the pinnacle of man's technological achievement. It represented the hubris of man, the belief that we were invincible, that nothing could go wrong, until everything did. It's a story frozen in time. It's a moment before the world changed forever. It was supposed to be man's greatest triumph, which makes the fall so tragic. The other interesting question we should ask is, will this obsession continue? I personally think yes. I think it will continue. Every generation seems to find a new way to rediscover Titanic. In the 1950s, it was A Night to Remember. In the 1980s, it was the discovery of the wreck. In the 1990s, it was Kate and Leo. In the 2010s, it was documentaries and dive missions. In the 2020s, it's TikToks, YouTube, tragic parallels like the OceanGate Titan sub disaster. There's always something that is keeping that spark going of Titanic interest. And going forward, we're seeing really cool initiatives by museums and exhibitions to preserve real-life artifacts, as well as creating digital copies of the wreck using modern technology to preserve Titanic forever. I'd say that this obsession is always morphing, but it never seems to die. Titanic isn't just history anymore, it's legend. And maybe that's why it's still alive. Titanic is the ultimate story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, heroes, villains, irony, heartbreak, and the craziest part of it all is that it was all real. So why are we still obsessed with the Titanic? Because it reminds us of what it means to be human, to be flawed, to be hopeful, to be ambitious, and sometimes tragically wrong. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And if you're obsessed with the Titanic like me, which I'm guessing you probably are if you made it this far, please don't forget to hit that like button, to hit that subscribe button, and also drop a comment and let me know what was the moment for you that sparked your lifelong Titanic interest. Honestly, I want to know, so let me know. Now, if you want to continue down the Titanic rabbit hole, I suggest you watch this video here or this video here. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.